And welcome back, everybody. It's good to be exchanging again. This time, chapter 3 of our text. And I wanted to mention before we begin building our information security programs and policies, we want to consider information security frameworks, right? To identify what we're trying to achieve and why. So, an information security framework is going to provide us these series of documented and agreed and understood policies and procedures and processes. Help us identify gaps to see how information is managed in our business to lower our risk and vulnerability and increase confidence in an ever connected world. Now, we are going to accomplish these objectives, is the goal. We begin with an understanding of confidentiality, integrity, and framework, and availability, rather. And we want to look at CIA now in the concept of a framework, right? So a framework is, without a framework, we frankly have no foundation. Like if without a foundation, you can't have a building, right? So a framework, it chooses, by choosing a framework, we're actually making the choice for preparedness over crisis, where a framework helps us to be proactive in terms of the CIA. So, in the same way we need a framework for our information security program, we would need a foundation for a building. A framework really provides that. So, we need to first identify, as I said, what we're trying to achieve and why. Now, CIA, these are the three basic tenets of information security as we have discussed, right? That's in the CIA triad. Its confidentiality ensures that information is accessible only by those authorized to access it. Integrity ensures the information is reliable, that the one who sent it is the one, or if you have hash values, that the document hasn't been changed. The first one I was talking about was a signature, data signature, right? And availability ensures that data is available and accessible to satisfy needs. So, a backup policy in your data center or a failover capability, that sort of thing. So this is what CIA is about, right? Something we strive to attain, this confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Quoting FISMA, the Federal Information Security Management Act, FISMA defines a relationship between information and security triad. Because it says information security is a means of protecting information and systems from unauthorized access, use, disclosure, disruption, modification, or destruction in order to provide this CIA capability for us, right? And so you may be wondering which is the most important. Well, that answer is going to vary. And so it requires an organization to assess its mission, its services, the regulations that apply, the contractual agreements, etc. So that's a good question, but it will vary. So we'll jump right into confidentiality. What is confidentiality? This is something that you keep in confidence, that you expect others to keep. Certain amounts of information that must be private, right? So confidentiality is the requirement that private or confidential information is not disclosed to others. The doctor-patient privilege, the priest-penitent event, the attorney-client privilege, for example. Those are common examples of where we should expect confidentiality. In a company, we can do that according to data classifications, right? So the internet, in its inherent weaknesses, and frankly, those willing to and able to exploit vulnerabilities, these are the reasons why protecting confidentiality has a new sense of urgency, right? So it's the race to market sometimes means that security gets sacrificed, right? It used to be DevOps. Now it's DevSecOps because we want to make sure security is incorporated. But in the race to market, sometimes it gets forgotten, right? And there are many, many examples. The book goes over them on page 67. In fact, there's a good article about Private Bradley Manning. He was famous for disclosing a bunch of U.S. military secrets to WikiLeaks. And the book describes clearly how he did that. It's a good read if you are interested, right? And so confidentiality, only authorized users, right? The information must be protected when it's transmitted. So we'll talk about data in use, data in motion, data in storage, right? That sort of thing. Dim, dar, Dewey, as I call it. Confidentiality is about understanding the threats that come against us. Cybercrime, frankly, is relatively easy. It's low risk. It's high reward crime, right? Criminals exploit our weaknesses in network design, software communications, and even people, right, with phishing. And they're out for this financial gain, sometimes notoriety. Sometimes they want to make a statement like a hacktivist would, right? And there's a good definition on page 68 of a hacktivist that the book describes. You're welcome to read that. We've had that in other courses. But the point is, all of these items listed on the slide are threats to confidentiality, and sometimes we don't even think about them. And there are many, many more. It could go on all day. What about a clean desk policy being applied so that to ensure that people don't leave things out and that confidential information isn't seen, that sort of thing. Okay, so very interesting. Now, integrity is the next topic. And so integrity is certainly one of the highest ideals of personal character, right? We like people with integrity. So when we say someone has integrity, we mean that he or she lives their life according to a code of ethics. They can be trusted to behave in certain ways, and which means they can probably be trusted with confidential information. And so integrity is the protection of information in cybersecurity, of processes, of systems from intentional or accidental unauthorized modification. So data integrity is changed, is a requirement that programs are changed only in a specific and authorized manner, right? Data system integrity is about systems performing in an intended function in an unimpaired manner, right? So a virus that corrupts some of our systems, files required to boot up the computer, this is an example of deliberate, unauthorized manipulation, right? So we want to avoid a virus that might get into the root of the computer and impact your boot up process, that sort of thing, right? So there are many threats to integrity. Human error, a lot of times it's accidental. Hackers like to attack it. Unauthorized user activity, often internally. Improper access control, malicious code or viruses, and interception of data transmission. Again, dim, dar, Dewey. You'll see commonalities between the CIA elements along the way. Controls that can be applied to protect data integrity. First and foremost, I go to access controls, which is one reason ZTNA, or Zero Trust Network Access, is one of those hot items now, and should be. I agree. Access controls. I can do encryption or digital signatures. I can do process controls like testing my code before I deploy it. I can monitor doing like file integrity monitoring, right? Did a file get changed in a manner that I don't authorize, right? We don't mind files getting changed, but certain files shouldn't be changed, or you want to be aware of them and you'll get a warning. I can also monitor my logs to ensure integrity. And I can even apply behavioral controls, separation of duties, rotation of duties, and even the user security agreements. Okay. Now, availability is important. Would you feel secure if your car failed to start? Would you feel secure if you were sick and your doctor couldn't be found, right? So availability is very important to us. For with the systems, whether or not systems or data are available for use is just as critical. So availability is the assurance that systems and data are accessible by the authorized user. So information, we realize is not just about computers, it's about information, right? Information, that's why IT and IT security as separate organizations need to work together with, for example, physical security to ensure a secure environment. Availability is generally one of the first security issues addressed with vendors or with an internet service provider. You've heard of the 5 nines, right? That's about uptime. 99.999% of the time, something needs to be operating. And that's called 5 nines SLA, or Service Level Agreement. An SLA is a type of agreement between some service provider and the customer that addresses availability of services. So you'd want to have a policy driving availability. Just like confidentiality and integrity, we do prize availability. We want our friends and family to be there when we need them. That's what availability is about. And so there are threats to availability to be aware of, right? Even a natural disaster. What about hardware failures, programming errors, human error, et cetera, right? We want to put safeguards in place that address availability. Safeguards would include controls, monitoring, data redundancy, etc. So, for example, failover in availability, or we might cluster our servers together that have the data, or we might want to provide a web application firewall in front of a web application to provide additional firewall protection. Those would be controls or measures against the threats. One of the biggest threats is a DDoS attack, or denial of service. This is an attempt to make our machine or network resource unavailable. They flood our servers or machines with, for example, a ping attacks, right, from the ICMP. And in doing so, they're trying to make the resource unavailable to real customers who can do the job. A denial of service attack. So it's a DDoS attack is on a hyper scale, right, from a DOS attack, but it's the same type of attack. So a DDoS attack is one when a multitude of compromised computers, they're going to attack a single target, right? This flood of incoming requests to the target system essentially forces the host computer, the target computer, to shut down, thereby denying any legitimate users. There's a picture of it on page 71 of a DOS attack. And of course, these are bots. So the botnet, a bot is a robot. And you'd have a bot herder probably managing a DDoS attack, right? And this would be if a group of computers are taken over, it's a botnet, and again managed by a bot herder. Okay, that's where we're going to stop. We're going to come back with the 5 A's of information security.